Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins in 2007, a 23-year-old named Cherry, who sets out to commit a robbery using his truck. Through his backstory, we learn Cherry is struggling with depression, and feels hopeless about life. It's revealed that he's experienced in robberies and knows how to execute them successfully. Upon entering the bank, he fires a gunshot to intimidate the crowd, and demands money from the teller. However, when he looks at the teller, he is overcome with sadness, and has a flashback to 2002. In 2002, he is a university student who falls in love with his classmate, Emily. Despite Emily's interest in him, he reveals he already has a girlfriend named Madison from high school. He visits Madison on weekends, but their relationship becomes strained when he discovers Madison is popular with other guys at parties. Cherry later takes a job at a restaurant, but his lack of skill in making dough leads to him being fired after just 2 weeks. After finishing work, he visits his best friend, James Lightfoot, whose parents died when he was young, leaving him mostly alone. They decide to go to the bank to resolve an issue with Cherry's account, accompanied by a friend Roy, and Roy's cousin Joe, who is set to join the Marines. James tries to dissuade Roy from letting Joe enlist. However, their plans are derailed when James's car catches fire, and Cherry's bank problem remains unresolved. They return to James's house on foot. The next day, Cherry meets some kids who want to use Xanax, which he's been taking for panic attacks. They invite him to a party, which he decides to attend after getting high. At the party, Cherry is surprised to find Emily, with whom he shares a flirtatious conversation and a passionate kiss. They spend the night together, and he sees her as a compassionate antidote to his sadness. However, Emily, who herself is broken due to abusive parents, doesn't believe in love, and decides to break up with Cherry to study in Montreal. Despite his pleas, she leaves, prompting him to enlist in the U.S. Army as a medic, to find purpose. Initially seen as a joke by the officers, he proves himself, and is sworn in for 2 years of service, hoping to find fulfillment and overcome his sadness. Cherry's friends, unaware of his decision, try to convince Joe not to join the army, fearing he'll suffer like James's brother. But James doesn't know that Cherry is also enlisted. Cherry receives a call from Emily, asking for a final meeting. He arranges to meet her at the restaurant where he works, hoping for a private farewell. However, Emily brings her friend Benji, upsetting Cherry. Devastated, he finds solace from the restaurant owner, and strikes up a connection with a guest named Tommy, who later drops him home. Surprised to find Emily at his house, she apologizes for her actions. They spend time together, and she confesses she's decided not to go to Montreal, because she loves Cherry. He however reveals that he's joined the army. They agree to pursue their paths separately, but get married before his deployment in 2003. During basic training, he befriends Jimenez, and undergoes grueling tasks, including witnessing a fellow soldier's suicide attempt. He and Jimenez pass their medical training, and are deployed to Iraq. In the war zone, Cherry confronts his fears but is encouraged by Jimenez. He tends to wounded soldiers, witnessing the horrors of war firsthand. After returning to camp, he and his comrades grapple with the emotional toll of their experiences, having witnessed 8 casualties. On their first day stationed in the perilous Triangle of Death, they are filled with fear, knowing the dangers that await them throughout the year. Despite the constant threat, they diligently patrol the area, keeping a watchful eye for any signs of danger. At night, they tend to the wounded Iraqis, forging a deep bond, as they navigate the challenges together. During one patrol, Cherry voices his concerns about a potentially unsafe route to their sergeant, but his advice is ignored. As feared, their vehicle becomes trapped in quicksand, leaving them vulnerable. When Jimenez and 3 other soldiers set out to retrieve a tow cable, tragedy strikes. An improvised explosive device detonates, engulfing their vehicle in flames. Cherry races to the scene, only to find Jimenez and the others severely burned. In a heartbreaking moment, he is forced to collect Jimenez's remains, grappling with the grief. The weight of loneliness becomes unbearable, prompting him to seek solace in conversations with Emily and Vince, processing his emotions. After completing his 2-year service in 2005, Cherry returns home to a warm welcome in the United States. His bravery and sacrifice are recognized with the Medal of Valor, honoring his service to his country, amidst the harrowing experiences of war. Despite Emily's presence at his convocation, Cherry feels like he hasn't accomplished much. However, reuniting with her brings him a sense of relief. She takes him to a house she has built, and he begins taking night classes at the school where Emily works, while working during the day. Life seems promising, but his traumatic experiences haunt him, leading to PTSD and severe anxiety that disrupts his sleep. He turns to Xanax to manage his panic attacks. Emily becomes frustrated with his erratic behavior, and starts taking Xanax herself to cope. Meanwhile, his best friend James falls into addiction, accidentally getting arrested during a break-in. Cherry bails him out, and they start spending more time together. Concerned by Emily's distress and his neglect of responsibilities, he decides to seek clinical treatment. His doctor prescribes OxyContin, which he later abuses. Seeing Emily's struggles, his neglect pushes her to the breaking point. She begins taking his medications, and they both spiral into addiction, reminiscing about better times, as they sink deeper into their substance use. Eventually, they become dependent on OxyContin and other stuff, leading to financial ruin for him. Desperate for money, he turns to his dealer friend, Pills and Coke, who entrusts him with safeguarding a safe. Cherry, Emily and James break into Pills and Coke's safe, only to discover it filled with substances. They indulge in the stash, but their high comes crashing down when they mistake a visitor for the police, and hastily dispose of the remaining stuff. To their dismay, the visitor turns out to be Pills and Coke, furious at the empty safe. Pills and Coke warns them that his boss, Black, will seek retribution for the missing stuff. Fearing for their lives, Cherry decides to rob a bank to repay their debt. With a note implying he's armed, he swiftly obtains a stack of cash from a teller. He keeps some for himself, and they celebrate their haul. As they revel in their success, Joe alerts Cherry to the police's interest in him, prompting him to lay low. He spends his ill-gotten gains on substances, until he exhausts the funds. Resorting to robbing more banks, he continues using the same tactic, accumulating money to fuel their addiction. Despite their spree, he remains indebted to Pills and Coke for their substance fix. Desperate, he involves Pills and Coke in a bank heist, only to return home to Emily's frustration at her lack of stuff. After injecting her with stuff, Cherry is horrified when she overdoses, and has to be rushed to the hospital. The doctor warns that she narrowly escaped death. When her parents arrive, her mother blames Cherry for her daughter's condition, demanding he leave her for good. Reluctantly, he obeys and departs, leaving Emily behind. However, she escapes from her rehab center, and seeks out Cherry. Despite his attempts to send her back, she insists on staying with him. Back at their home, they resume their destructive habits. When he falls into financial distress, he teams up with Pills and Coke and James, to rob multiple bank tellers at once for quick cash. However, during the heist, James panics and flees, leaving the other two to proceed alone. Nerves fray, and Pills and Coke's erratic behavior forces Cherry to take control of the situation, which angers him, leading to Pills and Coke abandoning him in the bank. Left alone and trapped as the bank gates close, Cherry realizes the dire consequences of his actions and his situation. Narrowly escaping the bank in a getaway car, he is fraught with fear that his accomplices might betray him to the authorities if apprehended. Desperate to evade capture, he persuades James to aid him in searching for Pills and Coke. However, their efforts are in vain when they discover Pills and Coke has been shot, bleeding profusely. Cherry urges James to seek medical help, but they realize that doing so would jeopardize their own safety. Left with a grim choice, they abandon their wounded companion by the roadside. The next day, as Cherry returns home with his partner Emily and their faithful dog, he is confronted by Black, a menacing figure demanding repayment of a debt, threatening Emily's life if Cherry fails to comply. Trapped in with Emily's life hanging in the balance, he resolves to carry out one final heist. Before departing, he shares a tender goodbye with her, knowing the risks he faces. It comes full circle to the beginning bank robbery, Cherry providing directions to Black, who is tasked with driving the getaway car. Inside the bank, Cherry boldly demands money from the teller, and instructs her to trigger the alarm as he departs. Unfazed by the impending consequences, he relinquishes the stolen cash to Black, before embarking on a reckless display of defiance. Walking brazenly in the middle of the road, Cherry deliberately attracts the attention of law enforcement, firing a gunshot into the air. Seated by the roadside, indulging in a final intoxicating high, he awaits the inevitable arrival of the police. As the sirens draw nearer, his arrest marks the culmination of his turbulent journey, offering glimpses of Cherry's arduous path towards redemption. Overcoming his addiction and grappling with the trauma of his past, he endures a 14-year sentence behind bars, emerging from the confines of prison in 2021. Stepping into the uncertain terrain of freedom, he is greeted by the heartwarming sight of Emily, awaiting his release with unwavering love and support. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.